Yeah, I did. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Let us all be a beacon in this world to let our light shine. So, welcome to the first existentialist congregation of Atlanta. Would somebody bring me a bulletin, please? We are a philosophically based spiritual community founded on existentialist and feminist principles, dedicated to human liberation, dedicated to the powerful history of this place. It was built 100 years ago by the African American Antioch East Baptist Church. We acknowledge that in the 1980s, the Muskogee Creek people were driven from this land, and we support justice for all indigenous people. It's great to have you here this morning. I hope you're prepared. You've got your woolies out as the temperature is going to drop throughout the day. The first quote I'd like to read today is by Susan Sarandon. This is an amazing country for all its faults. My feeling is, dig in and let's try to change the world. Dissent is not only your right, it is your duty. I'm glad that you decided to join us this morning. And if anybody has a community announcement, if you would write it down and bring it up to me so that I can let everybody know a little later on in the service. Do we have any newcomers this morning? If you would like to stand and...
Do we have a song?
Opening song.
Yes, we could. Just for you, Pat. We have an opening song. And that number is number 51. Over my head in the pink book. Number 51.
Over my head,
Are there any newcomers that would, or those who haven't been in a while, that would like to stand and give us your name, how you came to be here today? Anyone? Oh. Yes.
Well, I'll be the guest speaker today, and this is my second time here, so I can use part of my 20 minutes right now. I'm happy to be here. I mentioned the last time I was here. This is the second time. Professor Linda Bell responsible for inviting me. But years ago, before I was invited, I passed by and saw that Black Lives Matter. And it was at a time, the song we just sung, I see trouble in the air.
Yeah.
There was trouble in the air, there's trouble today. But I just want to tell you that really picked my spirits up, so I just want to share that with you. Thank you.
My name is Stefano, and
I'm Sarah.
and it's our first time here. We were here yesterday. Thank you. We were here yesterday for Fiddler's Green, and just looked up to learn more about the space, and so we decided to come today. Thank you.
Welcome. If you would like to keep track of us and what's going on the bulletin that you received, there's a little called connection card on there. If you'd like, please fill that out and put it in a collection plate, and we'll put you on the email list so that you keep up with what's going on. No, anybody else? Okay. How about birthdays and anniversaries? Let's see, I think we're saying to Andy already. Andy, you still having a good birthday? All right. So let's go for another congregational song. This is going to be still in your pink book, page number 18. The title is Lift Every Voice. We're going to sing verses 1, 2, and 4. And I'd like for you, if you look down on the second set of words down here, it says, the very last fourth verse, it says, we achieve brotherhood for all mankind. If you would change that to familyhood and humankind, please.
Thank you.
Yeah, with us.
for picking that song today. Those of you who have a pencil, it would be great if you wanted to go to that fourth verse and change those words in your songbook from brotherhood for all mankind to familyhood and humankind. That way we'll have it right there in front of us.
Say again.
Change brotherhood to familyhood and mankind to humankind.
Where is it? It's the fourth verse of page 18, the one we just did. We're just changing it for future.
Second one.
I'd like to share with you my thoughts for today. I picked a quote to begin it is, and that is, many critics dismiss Black Lives Matter protests, saying that this anger is hard to sustain in the long run. Activism fatigue may be real, but passion, righteousness, and more importantly, change is not idealistic. Social justice stems from the continued commitment of individual protesters, but thought leaders and talented orators, essayists, and writers help voice the grief and indignation that people feel toward injustice. Activism fatigue can be hard. Social media plays a crucial role in how protests and civil rights movements mobilize and coalesce. Injustice no longer concerns just our local community. We hear about it everywhere, expanding out from our city, our state, our country, out into the globe. So, while activism fatigue can feel draining, time and time again, protesters have overcome it to push for progress. That came from the Tango website. And I think it fits very well today, both with our speaker and the fact that there are marches going on across the country. March in Washington, there's a march here in Atlanta to coincide, and it is the People's March. It is a march for women's rights, civil rights, LGBTQ rights, the environment. It runs the gamut of what is going on in our world that needs our personal commitment and to protection. So I am in awe of those that will be out there marching, particularly those in cold climates. And but it's important, and whatever that you can do, whether it's to get out there and march, if it's to sign a petition, if it's to write a letter to your congressperson, or give money, whatever it is, whatever act of resistance, of protest that you can provide to the anti-democracy, anti-justice, anti-equality, every action that you choose is an important action. Thank you. So, do we have any other, I have 2 community announcements. Do we have any others that somebody wants to bring up? Okay. So, There's a One World at a Crossroads, Wednesday, January the 22nd. That will be this coming Wednesday from 7 to 9 o'clock, connecting Atlanta and Hiroshima at the African American Hall of Fame at the King Chapel Morehouse campus. That's Western Drive. There's a Zoom link if you're interested in attending. Very important. Also, this is very important. This is very important. We have an art opening this Friday from 6 to 8. Who's our artist?
It is the students of Stonewall Tell Elementary School, and the kids are going to also be the orchestra, the musicians.
How cool is that? All right. That's from 6 to 8 this coming Friday. I hope you can join us. But closer to that, after the service today, we have our eat and greet. We always appreciate anyone helping us with the setting up tables and in the back and the little tables up here so we have a place to sit. We're going to have birthday cake for the January birthdays, Andy Weisskopf and Suzanne Imes. There will be 2 cakes. The larger cake is not gluten-free. The small cake is gluten-free. So, please help yourself. Please stay. It's a great time for us to have fellowship with one another. Get to know each other better. So, I hope you'll stay. I hope our visitors will have an opportunity to stay. So, we're going to have a few minutes of silence. This will be an opportunity for you to go within and pray, meditate. There are candles on either side of the sanctuary, and I'll ring the chimes when it's time for us to come back together.
Over
Scout Road Work. It was wonderful. Thank you so much.
My favorite songs.
I cannot find, I have it right here, but I cannot find all the information that I was going to read about our speaker today. He is a professor at Georgia State University in Africana Studies, and he has published, he has been a speaker for participated in the particularly for the rights of just basic freedoms. And I apologize that I can't find the thing that had everything up there, but I hope that you will just take the time that you need to share with us, and I appreciate it. So I'd like to bring forward our speaker today, Dr. Umoja.
All right. Good morning. Good morning. And just like to greet you all in the name of our mothers, fathers, all our ancestors. What a blessing to be in community, particularly with folks who believe in resistance to oppression, who believe in human rights, who believe in self-determination. And so just a blessing to be here amongst friends and comrades. As I mentioned before, this is my second time here. The last time I spoke, I had just come back from Venezuela, and I talked about U.S. intervention there, which still goes on today, as well as other places around the world. And when I was asked to speak today, and we were to speak celebrating the life of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., I automatically went to my favorite sermon of Dr. King, given February 4th, 1968. It's called The Drum Major Instinct. This sermon, the recording of the sermon was played at his funeral. Coretta Scott King decided that this would be his eulogy. So for me, for the person closest to him, the person who carried on his legacy after his passing, I think we need to pay attention to that particular sermon. Oftentimes, you know, this time of year we play I Have a Dream. And I Have a Dream is an amazing speech. And I emphasize sermon because the setting for the Drum Major Instinct, the recording we had, was really at Ebenezer, was to the congregation. And so it has a message in it that's intimate to the congregation, but it has a message that is universal, is global, particularly for that moment. Now, I see a whole lot of young folk in here. So, 1968, I was 14 years old. In fact, I might have been 13 by the time my birthday had come, because it's in February, my birthday's in August. So I was probably 13 when this sermon was delivered, but I tried to go back and remember what was going on, what was the setting during the time that King gave this sermon. 1968, what do some of the folk here think? We could be a little bit interactive. What's kind of issues are going on?
Vietnam.
Vietnam was big. And he mentions Vietnam, and he mentions the war as one thing that he's talking about, one of the issues that is impacted not only again the congregation, but at least the United States, and really it was an international issue. So Vietnam is one of the things, and of course, you know, the king took a stand around Vietnam. In fact, that was one of the things that got him in trouble, right? The folks who many of us believe who assassinated him, but also other than the powers that be, some folks said, well, you're a Baptist minister, you shouldn't be talking about those things. You're a black leader. You're a civil rights leader. Just stick to civil rights. Leave that global stuff alone. Vietnam was one thing. Of course, during that time, there was a lot of urban unrest. Of course, we will remember after King was assassinated, a couple of months after he gives this particular sermon, there were over 120 cities in the United States were in flames. A lot of that was fueled by the wealth gap, by lack of resources in poor communities. So there's still a level of poverty. Voting Rights Act in '68, only 3 years old. And they were moving, as it was said with the Brown versus Board of Education, with deliberate speed in providing voting rights to folks, right? So there's still big power gaps. Many communities, you might have black majority communities in the South and no black elected officials during that particular time. So still this gap going on in 1968 in communities. Of course, what was the campaign that Dr. King initiated in the last part of his life? The Poor People's Campaign. The Poor People's Campaign. So this Poor People's Campaign dealt with black people, but also dealt with Spanish-speaking folk, you know, the western part of the United States, Puerto Ricans, dealt with the indigenous population, dealt with poor white folks, and it was a massive campaign the King envisioned bringing folks together across the United States to go occupy Washington, D.C. to get some changes. He was talking about developing a guaranteed income for everyone in this society. Some of the things we deal with today, healthcare. So King he had won voting rights. He had won some legislation. Or I shouldn't say he, because he didn't do it by himself, right? This movement he was a part of. It won voting rights. It had won the end to legal desegregation, where Linda and I worked, Georgia State. Prior to 1964, if you were a person of African descent, you couldn't attend there. Took a movement to bring about. Now Georgia State graduates more black folk than any school in the United States. Wow. Think about that. There's no majority ethnic group there at Georgia State, but there are more black students there than any other ethnic group. You know, well over 40%. So this movement had achieved those things. King was looking at, well, wow, we won these things, but we can go to any restaurant. Can I afford to go there? You know, there are still people who can't afford, as we heard earlier today, housing. Can't afford shelter. So King was moving to deal with some of these particular questions. So he addressed them in his drum major instinct. What is the drum major instinct? And of course, many of us grew up, when you went to high school, I know the football game, the marching band. And out in front of the marching band would be the drum major. And so King talked about, and of course, if you go to particularly some of these historically black college marching bands, the drum major, he or she, they show out. They show out. And they're not just keeping the time of the band, right? performing, they're dancing. In fact, that's why I could never be the drum major, because I don't dance that well. I'm better at this. I'm better at researching and writing books. But the drum majors, they would show out. And so King took that image that symbolized the drum major, and he talked about some positive aspects of the human experience and some negative aspects of the human experience. Because the drum major, to King, it represented an ego. And sometimes the ego can drive us into great achievement. I think of, I'm a basketball fan, I think of Kobe Bryant and how Kobe Bryant was driven to be the best basketball player. If you hear about Michael Jordan was really driven to, these guys would practice. Here we have LeBron James, who's in his 40s, just getting into his 40s, who's, just amazing, and he's in better shape than 20-year-olds, right? And he spends, they say, $1 million on keeping his body up. I sure wish I could use that $1 million. But to keep his body up to entertain folks, right? And so they're driven. I guess you could say that's an example of a positive. Of course, we think about great musicians. I'm a lover of John Coltrane, of Thelonious Monk, and I think about how these folks practice. I have some members of my family who want to go into music, but they don't practice. You know what I mean? These people practice all day. They're driven to be great. So Dr. King looked at it from that aspect, this drum major instinct. But he talks about this drive to be great can have positive and negative aspects. When he talked to his particular congregation that day, he pointed to that some of us have, I know when I was growing up, they said, you want to beat the Joneses? Any of y'all folks remember that?
Yeah.
You want to have a better car than your neighbor? You want your house to be bigger than your neighbor's? You want to outdress everyone else? He saw that on the community level, the neighborhood level, of being an aspect of the drum major instinct. And as we think about tomorrow, there's aspects of the drum major instinct that apply to at least some of my feelings. I can't say to everybody else's, but I suspect that a lot of people here have the same feelings. He talked about how one aspect of this drum major instinct was what folks call white supremacy. Today I've seen, people talk about white nationalism. And during that time, there was this organization, of course, you all heard of the Ku Klux Klan, but there was an organization called the White Citizens Council. White Citizens Council were supposed to be a little bit more sophisticated than the Ku Klux Klan. They wouldn't be the ones throwing a firebomb at your house. They would just do things if they saw people who were in the civil rights movement, they might impact them being able to get a loan on their house. They might be the folk who, if you did have a loan, they would call that loan in quick if you were a leader of a civil rights organization. They would do things through banking, they would do things through real estate, they would do things on a financial level to try to maintain white power, as they called it during that time. Now, Martin Luther King pointed to, there were some folks during that time who said that Jesus would have been a card-carrying member of the White Citizens Council. Jesus would have been a... Can you believe that? That was the way, almost counter to the theology we heard from Reverend, you mentioned her today, a complete flip from the theology we heard this morning, right? A philosophy that teaches hate. They said that Jesus would represent that particular philosophy during that time. And so he talked about how one aspect is thought to be better than other parts of our society, of humanity, that white folks should see themselves as superior to everyone else on the planet, to indigenous folks, to black folks, to Asian folks, to Latinx folks. That this is an aspect that King talked about of this drum major instinct to want to be better than everyone else on the planet and think that you're superior to them. So King talked about that aspect. Another aspect he talked about was his drive for the United States to be better and to dominate other peoples, other nations on this planet. To think that you have control of their resources, that you should control their labor. And all of that belongs to the United States. Of course, when you and I went to school, elementary, our K through 12 education, we were talking about manifest destiny, right?
Right.
So we were taught that, the people who founded the United States, they should have dominion over all of this continental United States. And who knows, they took Hawaii, Alaska, and somebody was talking about Greenland, Panama, Canada, changing the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America. Could you imagine? So, thinking about this drum major speech and how King framed it, I was thinking today or tomorrow will be the celebration of his legacy. And, there's another event going on tomorrow. There's another event going on tomorrow. And so, if Dr. King were to be here today, what type of questions would he pose to the congregation? Of course, Reverend Mitchell started off the whole service with acknowledging that before this was the United States of America, there were indigenous nations, First Nations who were here. Sometimes I'm in Africana Studies, but my primary methodology is history. History, Malcolm X once said, what did he say? Now I'm getting Alzheimer's and starting to forget. He said it's best qualified to reward our research. And so, I'm biased because I basically use historical methodologies for my research. So you can erase certain things from our stories and it'd be like it never happened. You don't mention the Muskogee Creek. It'd be like they were never here. If you don't know that history, right? We don't acknowledge that. So what would Dr. King say about that when somebody's talking about immigration policy? Immigration policy. Like you ain't descended from immigrants. Like you ain't descended from immigrants. And somebody talk about immigration policy. You know what I mean? Maybe the Muskogee Creek should have had an immigration policy. You know what I'm saying? So what would Dr. King say about that today? Or what would he say? I don't feel my ancestors were immigrants because they didn't choose to get here. They were captives. I mentioned earlier to one of the friends, that my father was a clergyman, they were from the same denomination. My father wasn't enslaved, but he was a sharecropper. You couldn't go to high school till he was in his late 20s. But that was a part of the legacy of this enslavement. Today, in 75 different jurisdictions in the United States, there are initiatives around this whole question of reparations. So what would Dr. King think about this? Of course, Dr. King spoke about that after the enslavement of my ancestors, that they weren't given any compensation. It's like having somebody in prison for 50 years, and then you find out, oh, they were wrongfully accused and convicted. Okay, you can get out of prison now.
Oh, yeah, right.
Well, what?
Yeah, there you go.
Well, what?
Yeah.
You know, no compensation for your captivity. So what would Dr. King think about that? And again, this is a question, and you know, the state of California's had a reparations task force. Did y'all know that?
Yeah.
State of California had a task force, there's legislation. City of Evanston, Illinois passed a $10 million reparations fund, which they're using to compensate people who were victims of redlining between 1909 and 1969. New York has a study going on. Illinois has a study going on. Fulton County has a study going on. City of Milan is about to start one. So it's happening. This conversation is happening in various places. Would Dr. King pose that to us today as an issue? What would Dr. King think about and pose to us about the environment, particularly after these fires in Southern California? You know, would Dr. King think the intensity of the wind has anything to do with how we treat the planet? Would he think that the drought that's occurred has anything to do with how we treat the planet? And what does it mean for not only our current lives, but future generations? I heard a ding. Am I approaching conclusion, right?
That's not your name.
Okay, I heard a ding. I didn't know. I was just checking. So what would Dr. King have to say to us about that? We heard that prayerfully the hostages will be released. What would Dr. King think about the deaths of over 40,000 Palestinians? And Dr. King would be about to, I'm sure, cry like I'm about to cry right now. I'm trying to keep myself together. 40,000 people. 90% of that population of Gaza homeless.
Yeah.
What would Dr. King think, and what would he pose to the congregation about that particular question today? We talked about genocide. That's the word. What would he think about genocide? The genocide that occurred there, and going back to the genocide we talked about, really I should have used that word when we talked about the Muskogee Creek and other First Nations on this continent. You know, genocide is a part of history. So what would he think about the fact that people are trying to erase from our curriculums even the mention of some of this history? Where would Dr. King stand on that? And not just where he would stand on that, where would he ask us to stand on that? So Dr. King would pose these questions to us. One of the things, and I've discussed this with K through 12 teachers, because I played the drum major drum major sermon. There's audios of it you can hear on YouTube, and I would encourage you all to listen to that. And not just listen yourself, we got to start sharing this stuff with folks. You know, in our social organizations, you are really doing it in your spiritual community, with our neighbors, with people related to us. And I know some of our family members can be ignorant as hell. But we got to challenge them, right? It's our responsibility to share. And so that's what I think, in conclusion, Dr. King would do today, is particularly with the inauguration of the 47th president of this empire. Okay? He would challenge us to think about the least of these. Right? He would challenge us to think about the poor. And he would challenge us to think about and to resist, as Reverend Missioner encouraged us to do, was to resist these systems of oppression. Whether the systems create racial and ethnic oppression, whether it creates class and economic oppression, whether it creates gender oppression. And let me back up a bit, and I don't want to be disingenuous. Dr. King had some issues himself. Now, we talk about patriarchy. In the movement, women challenged Dr. King, so I don't want to make him out to be perfect. Y'all feel me? Yeah. Women had to challenge Dr. King on his sexism. If you have to read about the great Ella Baker, okay, when we talk about erasures in history. So Dr. King had to be challenged on that, and I think Coretta challenged him some too. If you ever get a chance, maybe one of your speakers you can consider Dr. Beverly Guy Sheftall, who's head of the Women's Center at Spelman College, and she speaks quite eloquently on the politics of Coretta Scott King, on questions of gender and even sexuality. So a lot of times she's played as just the wife of King, but she had her own politics and sometimes pushed him on issues like peace. His stand on Vietnam was shaped by Coretta's advocacy, who was a pacifist long before they were married. And so we gotta, as I uplift Martin, gotta uplift her. So just, again, I was concluding, but I didn't want to miss that point, Reverend. Particularly in this place that has a feminist theology. I don't want y'all to think I missed that part of the narrative. Okay? So, but I will continue his legacy. I see Dr. King's, I see the great Rosa Parks, who's the saint of our movement, in the back display, and I would just want to encourage y'all to keep on doing what you're doing, keep on standing where you stand, keep on building where you're building, until we all be free. Ashe. Love you. Take care.
Thank you so much for sharing your words and your thoughts. What's on your heart? We're going to have a closing song. This is one of Gloria's favorites. Number 113 in your free book. Before we begin singing, I'd like to do be my final quote for the day. This is from Dr. Martin Luther King. As my sufferings mounted, I soon realized that there were two ways in which I could respond to my situation. Either to react with bitterness or seek to transform the suffering into a creative force. I decided to follow the latter course. Thank you so. Page number 113, there's a balm in Gilead. Thank you for coming, and may we, as we go through this coming week, may we think about these words, that we can be that balm in Gilead to heal the suffering soul. Anything that we do to do that is a worthwhile effort. So thank you so much for being here. Please help with the setting up for the big break, and have a wonderful week.